BOF. Today we're talking to Amber Valletta. I'm in London, she's in Los Angeles, so obviously it's really early in the morning. Or is it early in the morning?
It's really early. It's 8 a.m.
What time do you usually get up?
Well, normally I get up pretty early as soon as the sun's up. So I'm usually awake, but since quarantine, sleeping has been different.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
I found myself in bed at 10:30, which is ludicrous. You know, I usually go to bed around 3
a.m.?
Yeah.
Oh my God. I'm the opposite. So normally as soon as it's dark out, I'm ready to go to bed, and as soon as it's light out, I'm ready to get up. But I don't know, about maybe a couple weeks into quarantine, I started binge watching I don't know what, and started staying up till 2 and 1:30 and 3, and then was sleeping until like 10 o'clock, which is not my rhythm at all. But I've adjusted again. Now I'm kind of in bed earlier, but waking up a lot earlier.
Wow.
But I'm usually not having a conversation like this at 8 a.m. So
we'll make it really easy.
You look good, Tim, by the way. I like the hair.
Well, you do too.
Thank you.
You really look fresh.
Well, shower helps.
I know. My hair hasn't been this long since I cut it all off when I went to see the Rolling Stones in 1972. This is the longest my hair's been since then, which is kind of strange.
I love it, actually.
Yeah.
Like it?
Yeah, I know that makes me look like, I don't know, Einstein or Leslie Nielsen or something. I mean, I can live with it. But it's so ironic that I think about the last time we were in an interview situation, and everything that we were talking about then has just been completely sideswiped by everything that's happened in the last 6 months. And I know that things are tough in California again. So what the hell is going on right now for you? Last time we spoke, you were on the run from the fires, remember?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't really, without getting too political, unfortunately, I think Americans are really spoiled, and there's a lack of what I do affects someone else. And I think there's a lot of people who really believe that wearing a mask is not vitally important, and staying 6 feet away from someone isn't vitally important, and they're not thinking of the others. And I think that's a real issue. And not as California, it's maybe less political and a little bit more people. I think they opened a little too fast. They thought they were okay. And, people started going to the beach, and then they weren't listening, that things like not listening at the beach. And I just think people are just being personally just really selfish. And I think it's indicative of the president here and his lack of leadership and basing things on science, or lack of basing it on science, and walking around with himself without a mask, and all his cohorts walking around without a mask to major events. And what does that tell people? I don't need to do this. If this guy's not doing it, I don't need to do it either. So, it's a shame, because America's really a shit show right now.
What do you feel in your community? How closed off do you feel from everything that's going on around you? I mean, we haven't seen anyone since second week of March. That's a long time. I mean, obviously we see people like this, but
I stay in contact with people. I've seen a few friends. We've done some like socially distant. One of my best friends, I saw his new house, and we stayed, way away from each other, and the house was wide open. There was nothing in the house, and we both wore masks. And I saw a girlfriend, we took a, socially distant walk, but, we didn't hug. And, those are the only two. And I saw one other friend who I'm the godmother to her child. And I actually didn't spend any time with her. I spent time with the son and my godson. And that's it. And my son, I've seen my son and my teenage stepdaughter. So, you know, it's odd. I haven't seen any family members. We've done Zoom videos. I've seen friends from 5th grade on Zoom. You know, that stuff has been really amazing. But I'm going to drive next week to see my family in Oklahoma, and I'm going to do a test before I leave. And then obviously when I'm on the road, we're going to stay at a friend's house along the way that's going to be vacant and empty and safe. And then I'll be able to see my 90-year-old grandmother. Probably not. I don't even know if I'll get to hug her, which is, if I start going down that road, you'll get a tear this morning. Everybody who knows me knows I'm a crier. So, you know, it's strange. It's strange to not be able to be intimate with people that you love and that you know really well.
But you know, there's a theory that people get more creative when the more restricted they are, the more creative they get.
Yeah.
And you know, one question that I've been asked is, what have you learned to do during lockdown that you didn't do before? And obviously, you know, we see people baking bread and knitting and you know, there's a sort of handcraft thing, which I think is quite inspiring because it's, you know, entirely human activity. What have you learned to do anything that you weren't used to doing?
I didn't like suddenly learn a new language or, you know, write a novel or something, but I mean, I've done some fun things with the kids. You know, we cooked all sorts of things from scratch and like made dumplings with little faces, and I've gotten some makeup that I hardly ever use because I'm, you know, go to work and people do my makeup, so I don't usually do my makeup. And my stepdaughter and I like did a full beat down of like, it was like, you know, contouring the whole, I don't even know what I'm doing. I was just following her and trying to imagine Pat McGrath and what she would do. And so we've been playing. I think that's one thing I've been playing. I played with my godson. We had water balloon fights. We painted our hair pink and purple. And I've always played, but I don't think I had time to play in the last, I don't know how many years. So I've been playing a lot of unlearning and education. I've been taking the time to learn new things and reading about things that I think are really pertinent right now. And I did learn that, who knew? I didn't wear anything colorful today because I wasn't sure how it would come off on Zoom. But I don't know what's come over me. I've started wearing weird socks and really colorful clothes. And normally I'm like black and white and maybe a pair of blue jeans. And I'm like letting my inner colorful rainbow out, and it's been really fun. And I'm gardening. I can see out my window right now my big sunflower looking at me. So, you know, I think for me, it's been a time of just turning down the volume, playing, sitting with what is, which has been really uncomfortable at times, and sometimes amazing. I've had such fun too with my family. And the uncertainty has forced us, I think, to get really present. And so it's been an exercise of all the things that I usually use to practice to stay attuned in life, to just really be, which is really what it's about.
Because you were saying that you were working, you were really striving to get that work-life balance when we spoke before, because you were busy. You were in demand, you know, again, like it was an interesting moment where the fashion industry was reconciling. It felt like the fashion industry was reconciling itself with a number of key issues like racism, ageism, sizeism, all sorts of different things. And you and a number of the women that you modeled with at the, when you were in your peak of supermodeldom, were coming back, were being brought back to add authenticity. Obviously, all of that has temporarily gone on hold. Do you miss the work?
Yeah, of course. I miss everyone. I miss being that part of myself, which is creative, and in some ways you're solving a problem or help serving a situation, or bringing some sort of nuance to a situation in a photo. So yeah, I do miss those things, and I miss seeing everybody. I miss the connection to my fashion family. And at the same time, I think we have an amazing opportunity to restart and to begin again. But I would love to squeeze you and hug you.
Oh, well, if you could see below that little yellow bar and the thing, I'm very squeezable. I mean, but that's the weird thing. Everybody is in the same situation. It's not like you're stuck there and everybody else is having a good time. I'm in the same situation as my 91-year-old mum in New Zealand, and there's never been a time like that. So it really has been, I don't know if it's a sense of community that you feel, or whether it's isolation. But I feel a strange peace, actually. I mean,
that's good.
Because even if there's nowhere else. Like, if there was somewhere else I wanted to be, I couldn't be there. So it's been a very, very surreal situation, I think.
It is. I find myself, when I'm writing to people, instead of saying what a difficult time, or, I'm saying what an interesting time. What an interesting time to be alive. What an opportunity to be alive. Like, it is so unique. And yet I hope, I'm like with everyone, we don't want this to go on for years. But it is an incredible opportunity to stop and really figure out where we want to go from here. We can redesign a future, perhaps. I mean, people are starting to try to, get back to normal. But I think for a lot of us that feel the world needs to be elevated in a new way, I think feel that this is a great opportunity to pause and to shift. And it has leveled the playing field. None of us are working. And it does demand, I remember when I had my son, I had that question of kind of, who am I? Because you identify so much with one persona, and your ego is so wrapped in this idea of who you are. And then you have a child and you can't work, or you don't work, you choose not to work. And your identity shifts. And there's this sort of like, that was for me part of the kind of the struggle of the postpartum was that kind of shifting of identities, and realizing that, well, that all can be married. But, I think there is that shift for a lot of people. People are slowing down. They're like, oh, wow, I'm not my job. I'm not, this thing that I thought I was doing or being out in the world. And I think that's
now imagine that this lasts a while, though. Imagine that it isn't.
Well, that's the other part, right?
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like, it's a great opportunity right now, but is this something we want to live in permanently? No. I mean, I don't want to walk around thinking that my neighbor's got cooties. That's a horrible feeling, to be in the grocery store and everybody's like, don't touch me. Don't, did you see that movie Safe with Julianne Moore?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's kind of like that, like living in this like sealed up, isolated weird world. And I think that for humans, that's not a good thing either, you know, to have this kind of weird, creepy fear of each other. And
remember, that might have been in her head, though.
it what?
Remember, that might have been in her head in Safe. It might have been. It mightn't have been a real thing. It might just have been something that she had, you know,
Right.
we were never really sure.
We could go down that road too, you and I.
Now, what I'm thinking is that, you know, the notion of shrinking your world,
Mm-hmm.
which isn't a bad thing, because you shrink your world to something, I guess, that's real. And we were living in such, especially young people in fashion, lived on such an unreal plateau of, you know, that whole, if it's Tuesday, it must be Tokyo syndrome, which was an illusion, and which had to stop. I think it's funny that so much of the conversation in fashion over the last little while has been, this has to stop, this has to change. But, you know, with nobody ever actually anticipating that it would stop and it would change.
Mm-hmm.
And when you talk about an opportunity, the opportunity now, I mean, the opportunity is what? What do you see the opportunity being?
I mean, the opportunity is I think we could retool the entire industry in fashion, really. I mean, it takes a lot of work. There's a lot of complex issues, but if we really want to have an industry that can survive a time like this, because we will have more times like this if we keep messing around with climate change or not actually doing something about climate change, and encroaching on ecosystems that we shouldn't be in. We're going to have more pandemics. We're going to have more natural disasters that are going to be catastrophic. So our business needs to be resilient. And I think that's the future we want to build, is a resilient industry, which means we have to really stop doing business as normal, because normal is archaic now. Mm. We're in the 21st century. We should have a supply chain that is really fair and equitable. You can't post Black Lives Matter and then not pay your garment workers that are brown and indigenous people or Black people in Haiti. You just can't do that. You don't get to have both. You don't get to say we care and then not pay people right now during COVID. So that is, and for work that's already been done, by the way, there's a lot of garment workers who are not getting paid, and they're very, they're at the beginning of the supply chain, you know, so them and farmers. And we have to start thinking about those people that are actually really the beginnings of the creation of these clothing. Before the designers make this amazing piece, those are the people who put the blood, sweat, and tears. And I think that, for one, has to change, that part of the supply chain. So it needs to become more transparent, and equitable and fair. And we're talking about millions of women all over the world, most women.
So you still envisage, I mean, you are envisaging there that there is a role for fashion to play in this new world. That
absolutely, we are obliged to. Everyone gets dressed. Not everyone, you know, drives a car. So we're not in the automobile industry, we're in the fashion industry. And there's a reason why people are saying fashion for good, or fashion for change, or wearing your values, or, you know, sustainable style. And, you know, you and I've had this conversation many times. And I think we have a moral obligation. I mean, I hate to say that, but we do. We have the most amazing opportunity to be creative and innovative. We can create new industry through so much innovation, whether it's on the tech side to the material side, farming, energy, conservation. Then you go all the way to design. And then also discarding clothing is a whole nother industry that's hardly been tapped, where we could become circular and just keep all of these materials in one in one system, rather than extrapolating new materials. So like endless possibilities. We could become one of the most we already are one of the most powerful industries. We could become one of the most revolutionary and like real change agents. And I think to miss that opportunity, because we don't have regulations like the automobile industry does. That's why you had 16-year-olds who were going to work and staying up till 3 a.m, not getting fed. You know, we have the power because we don't have a ton of bureaucracy. The bureaucracy is really us. So as much as I put the responsibility on us in the industry, I also put it on consumers to wake up to their power. But I do envision a great industry that's colorful and powerful and bright and sustainable and innovative and equitable and fair and resilient.
You see, we have talked about sustainability a lot, but then what's happened, you know, with this crisis is something as kind of fundamental as the sea is being, the oceans are being choked with disposable plastic gloves and masks and, you know, this constant kind of ebb and flow between human need and the bigger picture. You know, where we have sort of very selfishly lodged ourselves at the top of the pyramid. And so everything we do has a much greater consequence than anything else that happens. That troubles me. That's why the notion of not going back, because we can't go back, even though obviously it looks like we are. I've got hair coming off my glasses. The notion of going forward in some way, but in a way which places us in the world, yeah. You know, which doesn't put us on this pedestal where we just use and abuse and discard and go on in this cycle. It felt when we were talking last time that you know, there was optimism. There was reason to be optimistic because there was a consciousness that was evolving in the fashion industry in a sort of substantial enough way that you could almost see that a critical mass might happen at some point. And then this happens, and you know, it obliterates so much. And we're not even back at square one. I don't know what square we're on, but
yeah.
I mean, how do you stay optimistic looking at moving forward? Because you are an activist in this area. So how do you how is your activism engaged at the moment when there are other concerns that seem more fundamental in a way?
I have done a lot of petitioning. I've done a lot of phone calling. I've been doing, you know, these sorts of conversations, or having these sorts of conversations with thought leaders. I've been listening a lot. I think this is a time to listen. I'm staying optimistic because I believe that people are going to need a place to dream, and people will need to go back to work. And, you know, that's the only way I can see it going forward, is this way. I can't imagine it being the same as before, Tim. I don't want to work in that. I don't want to work in an industry that is the same as before. How boring anyway, right? Fashion is always about change and innovation. So, and I think I have an internal belief that no matter what happens, it will all be as it's supposed to be. Whether that means we make it through or not, I don't know. But I believe there's something greater at play, and I can only move in the direction that I'm moving in, which I believe is that we have to uplift the consciousness around us. We have to change the way we're doing things. As you said, we have to stop putting ourselves at the top of the pyramid and play as a team, and that profit can't be the sole motivation, that people and planet have to be our motivation first, and then profit, because we don't really have anywhere to play if we've screwed everything up. So, but I've heard so many conversations, and I've been seeing things on the internet and on the news, not so much, but through social media, and I've seen so many people doing so much right now.
Mm.
And I think that is what keeps me buoyed here right now, instead of like sinking into like some sort of pessimistic place. But I just have to, that's the faith I have to have. I do really believe in the people that I'm listening to, and see that people are really fighting for something good right now on many fronts.
Who's the person who's been most inspiring for you? Is there any single voice you've heard that really gives you hope?
There's a person from the Black Lives Matter movement, and one of the organizers, I think I'm going to say their name right, Janaya the Future, and Patrice Kohler. Those two individuals are, I hear them. They're thoughtful. They're insightful. They're very clear, and there's powerful leadership. There's some amazing people doing amazing things right now. So many young people are changing the conversation and fighting for, whether it's the environment or people of color. I think there's going to be we're going to see another wave of civil rights playing out here in the United States, because there's so much injustice and discrimination. So I'm moved by so many people that I'm listening to. There's many of the elders that are speaking out right now, and even just listening to somebody like Jane Fonda talk about the environment. I have to believe that there's going to be a better outcome.
I think that what has been so interesting is that when we talked before, it was a time when Greta Thunberg was really, really in the news, and that sort of galvanizing the voice of young people all around, the voices of young people all around the world. And the way that has shifted into a sort of fire activism, something that is, at the time we said that the reason why those kids were so passionate is because really they had nothing to lose and everything to gain.
Yeah.
And now I think that's even more intense, that sense of, if there was a sense of urgency there, and this is where I see hope, the sense of urgency now is so much more acute than it was 6 months ago.
Yes.
And, there's hope in that, because change is going to be incredibly painful and difficult for really a lot of people.
Yeah.
But there's no alternative.
No, that's why I don't know why we're fighting it to try to get back to normal. It's like, what was normal? How many people were really happy and normal? And how many, yes, there's been so many lives lost across the world, and I don't want to underplay that or understate that, because there's so many people who've lost someone right now. But there has been so much happening and so many lives lost over the years due to so many of these injustices that we are finally looking at today, that I think going back to normal just doesn't make any sense. We have an opportunity to change, and maybe life is a little bit smaller for all of us, but what's wrong with that?
Well, I think inequality, one thing that's really become glaring is the insane inequality in the world. You know, look billionaires have done extremely well out of this crisis. And in the interests of finding a balance in the world, creating a balance which is equitable for everybody, I do not know how that situation can be reconciled. I just feel, I don't know how you feel living in America, but here, it just seems that a sense of shame, which used to be quite a powerful sense, you could shame people, you know, you could shame people into behaving properly. It doesn't seem to exist anymore. That seems to have been removed from, I mean, I know there's cancel culture, but shame, in anyone admitting anyone admitting their responsibility for the way things are, just doesn't exist anymore. I mean, I find that absolutely shocking. But at the same time, like we said, that there's these kids who are so empowered, and there's also, I think, the actual notion of people power, that we've seen it in our neighborhoods. We've seen everyone helping each other, and up to a point. I think we've reached the point where people aren't helping each other quite as much anymore, but I don't know. With your work, how are you taking that forward with the work that you were doing? I mean, like the work for climate change, the work for sustainability. Is that all on hold, or do you find that people are actually moving forward with it in a way that's as meaningful as it was when we talked last time?
I mean, I think it's hard when you're not able to be out in the world. So we're all doing a lot of talking and dialoguing. And people are, you know, just slowly starting to get back to work in some places. So it is, it's challenging. I'm working on, right now I'm working on, with a group called One-to-Ones with the UN and Swarovski, and it's sort of it's not really a challenge. It's meeting science and fashion together to achieve. They're taking a few of the UN sustainability propositions, and there's 13 of them, I think, and they have to meet like one or two of the criteria. And it's been very interesting and powerful to hear like science coming together and some technology in there, meeting with a designer and seeing that people are still, even though they can't actually achieve what they might have been able to do 6 months ago because the world was open and, you know, somebody could actually scale something a bit more, they're finding creative ways around it. And so still having those conversations and still finding ways to be creative. I mean, that is what you said before. People are finding ways to be creative and to have photo shoots at home or to solve these big problems that we maybe had better access to things 6 months ago. But, you know, we still have to try to solve these issues. And so, you know, we're having Fire Drill Fridays online. For Jane and Greenpeace, and they're just doing, you know, tons of, because people are listening more maybe at home, it is an opportunity to reach more people maybe than us protesting downtown in LA in front of the mayor's office about climate change. Maybe we're getting more ears this way through people sitting and listening at home. I don't know. But I know that none of the activism has really stopped. I have just spent my time, like I said, being of service when people ask me, and jumping on these sort of webinars and talking on panels, you know, doing stuff for British Vogue, for my editorship, for the contributing editorship. So I'm still doing things, but of course, you know, everything has sort of shifted. Things that I thought I was going to do that were more expansive have shrunk.
You get the sense that, you know, if you look at history, you know, after the Black Death, there was the Renaissance. After World War I, there was the 20s. After World War II, there was the 50s. And the 50s were a very creative time in movies and art. Do people talk about there being a similar sort of creative renaissance after this moment? Do you imagine that, well, maybe even now there are people finding ways to make art out of catastrophe, you know, to be inspired, to elevate our better instincts or whatever?
I mean, you've been having a lot of conversations with creatives. I'm curious, what have you discovered? Because I haven't, most of my conversations aren't necessarily with creatives. They're more academics or scientists, or maybe one designer working, you know, I'm not having those conversations, but certainly what I've seen on the internet, there's a lot of, you know, on Instagram, people are being very creative.
I think in fashion, people, there are certain kind of material challenges that,
Yes.
that take people in the moment, and they're not, you know, how do I keep my business going? And so
Yes.
they're not actually thinking about a new renaissance.
Yeah, of course.
You know, one thing that I was curious about is I loved punk. I mean, those years of punk in London were some of my favorite years in my life. And it was such a reaction to a very, very bad, difficult social, economic time. Punk came along as a total gut response. And I guess I was kind of hoping that we would see something similar. But, you know, maybe people don't necessarily express themselves in that way anymore. Maybe people are expressing themselves through, you know, maybe Animal Crossing will suddenly become like this this kind of cry of rage or something, that there'll be other ways. But I'm kind of hoping for a new punk, to be honest.
I think something will come of it. I just don't know what, and I don't know if we've even hit it yet, because we really haven't been here that long.
Yeah, so true.
In our kind of, for us, this is so, you know, this seems so long, and really, you know, things like the Dust Bowl, they were years, or wars like World War I. How long did World War I go?
Well, 4 years, but bit of a lead up, and then there was a pandemic after World War I to kind of stretch out the kind of the deprivation.
We're what, 4 months in?
Well, 6. I don't know when I guess I first heard about it in
lockdown then.
Yeah, I first heard about it. I got first aware of it in New York, maybe in February. So really intensely.
So I think we have yet to see perhaps what's going to come from this, because like you said, it is painful. That this is uncomfortable. Nobody is used to this, and I think it is uncomfortable, and from that comes growth and maybe some sort of interesting new wave of punk, or certainly I do feel an undercurrent. I don't know if you feel it there, but for sure here, there's a sense of rebellion going on. There is a sense of uprising here. Yeah. And I don't know, I know some of it is probably due to the election and obviously George Floyd getting murdered here. There's an upswell, and we've had a lot of trans women being murdered. I mean, there's an upswell of people saying enough is enough. You know, there's still children in cages here, and Trump keeps trying to, reverse all of these environmental laws. I mean, people, it's like there's a lot of kind of opposition. So I do think there will be something that comes of all of this, and it'll play itself out in fashion. It always does.
Well, there's monstrous polarization, and I don't really see how you build a bridge between those opposing forces, because right now,
yeah,
it's especially in America, but all around the world, America has set this strange tone. Yeah. You see these schisms in society opening up, not between income brackets and generations and races, and you honestly do not see what will, people used to say we would unite in the face of an alien invasion. Well, I mean, if you think of COVID as an alien invasion, which really blanketed the entire world, we haven't actually come together. In fact, it might have, where there were cracks, it might have driven them further apart. So that's been a rather unedifying lesson to be confronted with on a daily basis. And then where fashion fits into that, obviously, is a whole other, the extremes in fashion. Are we going to see restraint? Or are we going to see excess? What are people going to want? Are people going to want anything? Are people going to be are people just going to be internalizing and I don't know. I guess here they're trying to get them to go to the pub, but it's not really working.
I do really hope that, the big players take the opportunity to change the tone in a positive way. I really don't want to see the fashion calendar look like it did before. And
have you seen the digital fashion calendar?
No, I haven't. Tell me, what's that? What's the digital?
Well, because right now we're looking at Paris men's couture and Paris menswear.
Right.
A pretty packed calendar. But
so it's all online.
Admittedly, it's digital, so it's videos and things. But I don't get the sense that people are pulling back from the old routine. I mean, they might be doing it in a digital way, but I don't get the sense that there's, one point that was being made is that there was too much of everything. There was just too much fashion. There were too much clothes, too many shows. It was just spinning like a top. It was like an perfect entropy. It was moving faster and faster to the point where it was just standing absolutely still. So that was one thing that I was thinking after this, that there will be some kind of rationalization. But so far, I'm not necessarily getting that. It feels to me like the digital schedule is pretty packed, and everybody's talking about September up and running again with physical shows. I don't see that.
I don't understand how they're going to do physical
hope
shows.
springs eternal, I guess.
I really don't understand. I mean, I love the idea of it, but why aren't we slowing down the calendar and making it make sense for even the buyer, like for us consumers? I want to buy a t-shirt when it's actually summery or spring.
I think that might happen. I think that might be one thing that does happen, that reason might assert itself to the point where actually you'll be able to go to a store in the middle of winter and buy a winter coat instead of being confronted by a rack of bikinis. Yeah, I think that might happen. I hope that will be one good thing that comes out of this, that part of the calendar might be rationalized, but the rest of it, I love the idea of small is beautiful. I love the idea of people having a real business where they make clothes, they know who they're making their clothes for. Maybe they even have a direct relationship with them. They don't have to reduce the price to sell them to these people. These people come to them because they know what they're going to get. Yeah. For years and years, I've been talking about a return to the days of the dressmaker, the tailor, and the cobbler, and you'll be in Santa Monica or wherever you're in, in Santa Monica, you're in, close. Yeah. So there'll be a cobbler and a dressmaker and old ways, but in a new in a new setting, and anyway, that's my strange Pinocchio-like vision of the distant future.
I mean, I wouldn't be mad about having, John Galliano make me an outfit just for myself.
You'd be perfect, actually, in a little.
But actually, he's resilient, and he's very clever and magical, and I know he could make something out of anything, literally anything.
Okay, speaking of that, when you do look back, and we're all looking forward, I know, but when you look back, because you have a lot to look back at, what are your feelings now about those years, the 90s and the early noughties?
I like the naughties. I had the best time. I was blessed to live in I think probably the most spectacular time in fashion, the most creative. We had, so much freedom, and there were very little restraints, I would say. And there were no corporations holding all of these major fashion houses. They were owned by individuals or families or, a small investment group. And they were able to really kind of breathe. And, oh, I'm so sorry. My dog is hitting the door to go to the restroom. Much more important than my opinion. 1 second. Here you go. Sorry, Tim.
What is he?
She's an old Doberman, and she goes to the door in the glass and she hits it to tell you I need to go out. And she doesn't make a lot of movement. So, you have to listen. And the crews were smaller. Everything was smaller, more intimate. There was an intimacy and a, excitement that we don't have today. You didn't put things on, there was no Instagram. We didn't have cell phones.
No social media, no mobile phones.
There was anticipation of the next season, who was going to shoot the campaign? What was that spectacular last look? I mean, what fabric did so-and-so use? There was an excitement and a discovery of everything that was coming at you was a discovery, rather than, today it's like, oh yeah. Like, don't like, and it's to me, it's dumbed down what we are doing. And I don't think there's anything dumb about what we do in fashion. I think it's an extraordinary business. So many people put creative intelligence into what they do. And so I miss those days. We had a lot of fun, but I'm so grateful I lived them. And, some of the masters were still alive. Some of the greatest fashion designers that ever lived, stylists, photographers, hair and makeup, we've lost a lot of people, and I was fortunate enough to work with many of them. So, I learned so much in those days, and it was a gift.
Did you?
When I was like, what, 18, 17, 18?
17. Straight out of Oklahoma.
I mean, with the accent and all. Y'all, I still have that accent.
Did you keep scrapbooks?
No, I don't have any scrapbooks, but I have I have some boxes of pictures, and I'm working on something. I don't want to get, say too much, because I don't have like anything date, or I'm working on something reflective, but we can talk about that another time. But I do have things. I have some one-of-a-kind prints. I have things, Avedon gave me some like a contact sheet he had cut up that's like, who has things like that? So
who saw you the way you wanted to, who saw you the way that you liked being seen best?
I can't really say one person, because I think I've never wanted to be seen one way. I don't like stereotypes. I can't stand labels. It drives me insane. She's this girl, she's that. I never liked it about myself. And though I'm sure I've placed labels on people myself, it's something I work really hard. I don't like it when I do it, when I see someone and I'm like, you know, I don't like it at all. And I think I've strived really hard for my own career and agency to be as free from that as possible. And so there's some people that I love to work with because I trust them implicitly. And I do love the way they see me, but I like to see myself in many different ways. I don't want to see myself in one way. I'd like to see different parts.
Well, who saw you the way that you never imagined you could be seen then? Is that a different question? I mean, you were so different with everybody that you worked with. It was kind of, you could be Frances Farmer for somebody and Greta Garbo for somebody else. And, you know, it was kind of extraordinary. I always saw movie stars, actually.
You know, for sure, Peter and I had a spectacular creative relationship. And then Peter Lindbergh. And Stephen Meisel, I think, probably gave me the widest opportunity to see different parts of myself in imagery. And create different characters. Craig McDean as well. Working with Richard Avedon was such a gift. I only got to work with him a few times, but the one time with Versace, having that week with him alone was like, because he was really into photographing you as a person, not the fashion. So it was an opportunity because I'd seen his work, I'd seen his portraits and stuff, and I'd seen that he loved the mania, he loved all sorts of, you know, wild joy and intensity. And it was so fun to be able to have that seen as a part of myself too. That wasn't so much a model, it was more of a study of expression and insight for myself. So I don't know, there's so many people. I mean, I could go on and on and on, you know, you know, Inez and Vanud have, you know, shot these sweet and sexy, and I'm trying to think. I mean, I could just start listing names out, but I think it'll be obnoxious. But, you know, those are my long collaborators. I think those are my deep relationships.
And when you were actually doing shows, were there any particular moments? I love John's shows more than ever now when I look back, and I just think about what an incredible circus they were. But do you have, at the same time, I look at a show by Helmut Lang or Mucha Prada, and they're just that, you know, you've got rigor on one side and total excess and extravagance on the other, and they all just, they're art. Now you look back on them and they just like works of art, those things. And at the time you just sat in the show, 11 o'clock, you're at this show, 12 o'clock, you're at that show, 1 o'clock, another show, and all day long you're at shows. And you step back now and you think, God, what an incredible time. I mean, without sounding like I'm embedded in the past, but wow, it was an amazing moment.
It was.
Do you remember anything in particular as being like where you'd go in your time machine?
Certainly some Versace shows were, because they're like power moments. And I love Donatella and I love Gianni. He was like, you know, father figure when he came, and, you know, everybody kind of got to, you know, everybody straightened up. And those shows were like, you know, you felt like a woman, like a sexy woman, and powerful. And, you know, Mucha was poetic. There was an austerity to Prada and a poetry. And John was like, wow, you couldn't even believe this, the clothing that you were wearing and the ambiance he created, and John Galliano, and the stories that you were being told to kind of emulate and portray. And then, you know, just working with characters like Karl Lagerfeld. I mean, I remember thinking he was like a magician. He was so like otherworldly to me. And there was Helmut Lang was amazing. We used to do those shows in New York, and I remember.
Yeah, incredible. And Tom Ford turned you into Sharon Tate, which is another amazing moment.
What an incredible moment. Or I was blessed. I got to work with, I did Comme des Garçons and Yoji Yamamoto, and those shows were incredible. They were so beautiful and so, you know, another level in fashion. So, you know, everything in Calvin, I worked with Calvin when Calvin was still designing at Calvin Klein. And, you know, I think if we slowed down maybe today and that take what we've learned today, you know, from this pandemic, that perhaps, like you said, you haven't even been able to digest. When you're in it, you can't digest it because it's moving too fast. But if we slowed it down, I wonder if we could digest it better and hold it more, give it more value. And that maybe today would feel as creative and as important if we slowed it down and not posted it right away on the internet, you know, on Instagram. Yeah. I keep saying internet. I'm like, you can clearly tell I am not a millennial or a Gen Z. I'm like, the internet. It's like,
I'm way ahead of you. I'm amazed. I'm amazed. I'm amazed I can even get on Zoom sometimes. Well, Amber, it's been wonderful talking to you. And I hope that everything that we just talked about is part of this project that you mysteriously alluded to. But that would be wonderful, because I think that everything you were informs everything you are, you know, and I think it's
I don't know. I was a little bit, I don't know. Wild child, maybe that did inform some today. I learned.
You learned. Yeah. And it's all you can hope for in life, to learn and to grow.
It's true. It's true. I hope we grow from this, right?
Yeah.
We're growing our hair. That's certain.
Well, it's kind of stopped.
I don't have a beard, at least, today.
I shaved mine off.
You did.
Yeah. So we'll see each other. What can we say? We'll see each other on the other side.
Well, and you know, we should FaceTime each other just for fun.
Yeah. Okay. Let's.
All right. I love you, Tim.
Love you.